Morning, Tim. Nice to see you again.
Morning, Ollie. Yeah, it's good. It's getting regular.
I know, exactly. Yeah, there's now at least three people. Your mum, my mum, and one other person from Norwich, I think, listening so far.
That's good enough. It's good enough. So the big news this week has been about the GLP1s for weight loss. Yes, I don't know if you've got any initial thoughts with your kind of hats as a PCN director and GP.
Yeah, no. So this is the week, isn't it? They've actually allowing GPs to prescribe these GLP-1 or the skinny jabs now, isn't it? I mean, initially, I guess a slight sense of panic, really, because I think what they say, I heard the other day that something like 1.5 million people have already accessed these drugs privately, getting private prescription. So, does this open a kind of tsunami of people searching for these drugs? I think that'll be an initial worry for GPs for sure, won't it?
It will, but they've been quite limiting, haven't they? For good reasons. They've been quite limiting in terms of the kind of the people that can access these from directly from the GP. So they're very kind of strict criteria. And I know our friend and colleague Hussein has been on Good Morning and explained about the kind of the 40 plus 4
Oh yeah, 40 plus
criteria.
4. Go on then, tell us what's 40 plus 4.
The BMI over 40, and then they need kind of four out of the five conditions to go alongside that. So that would be, I'm going to see if I can get these right. So there's
Fine. Yeah,
established heart disease,
yeah.
uh, type 2 diabetes, hypertension, obstructive sleep apnea, and then the last one is abnormal kind of cholesterol and triglycerides. So
Okay, well
four
done.
out of those five you would need in order to kind of qualify. And I think quite sensibly and quite usefully for GPs, he said, you don't have to kind of ring your GP. They will let you know. So they're going to do searches on their system. So people don't need to be kind of ringing up to try and get hold of the jabs. They will get hold of you if you're eligible, which is helpful. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, it's pretty extreme, I guess, isn't it? That is, I mean, a BMI of over 40 is, really large, isn't it? So over 30 is considered to be obese, isn't it? Over 25 is considered overweight. Sorry, over 30 is considered overweight, isn't it? No, sorry, over 25 is considered overweight, isn't it? Over 30 is considered obese. So over 40 is very obese. It does, I don't know, there's something about targets though that really irks me, sort of like it's almost like, no, you're not quite fat enough yet, or you're not quite ill enough yet to qualify for these things. It is obviously a sort of financial rationing thing, isn't it? So it doesn't feel like it's kind of very personalized and related to the individual. I'd love to see us get to the point where, doctors and patients can judge together whether or not they think it's part of a plan. But that being said, of course, you don't want, people to flood in. But whatever they say, I think people will still, the word will go around, right? Your GP can prescribe it now, and everybody will still be, phoning up, wanting to talk about it. And I think GPs will be worried that this is just going to, overwhelm them even more than they are already.
Yeah. And I suppose the other thing is about maybe, I don't know, maybe is there an element? I mean, yes, I think cost is right. Is there an element about it being about safety as well and being not quite sure kind of what's happening? I know the reports coming in, I've
Yeah.
been noticing on kind of my social feeds about kind of pancreatitis and things. So again, there are some concerns. And again, concerns about kind of muscle loss as well as weight loss. So I
Yeah.
don't know. There's something, yes, I suspect the kind of the driver is the kind of the cost element, but I'm still quite I'd be quite cautious about these medications for a large group of people. Don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, it's a really difficult one, isn't it? And maybe we'll get on to talk about that because I think you and I have sort of we have kind of mixed views to some degree about using medications for things where we know lifestyle interventions can be as effective, if not more effective. But having said that, I absolutely recognize, having seen so many patients who have really tried what they consider everything. It's not like people are sort of lazy or sort of like, they have literally tried everything to lose weight, haven't they? So it's not through lack of trying. And so something like this can just be that extra leg up or that boost that they need. But that being said, I do feel that we're not offering people a good level of support for alternatives to medication. I really worry that people are being exposed to these risk factors. I mean, there are ordinary side effects to these medicines, aren't they? They make you feel sick. They literally work by stopping your stomach from emptying, don't they? So, you just fill up and feel sort of bloated and sick. I've seen loads of patients who just, oh, they feel it's miserable, so they're losing weight because they just feel rubbish. And I don't think that's a particularly optimistic or even sustainable way of shifting someone's kind of life trajectory, really. I would much prefer alternatives to medication. I've been exhausted more thoroughly.
Yeah, and that's the difficult thing, isn't it? I think because before the GPs could prescribe, um, patients were being referred on to these kind of higher tier services, and I do remember kind of from supervision some coaches coming and really despondent because they were being sent people who, in some way, to kind of work with them. And only if they failed with the health coach could they then go on to the high tier. And it was almost like setting up the coaches for failure, really
Yeah.
because they felt like, oh, I'm getting a whole lot of people really not interested in change. They just want the jab, and I just need to work with them, and it's really kind of slightly soul destroying. But now I think there's a real opportunity for our health coach colleagues with this kind of wraparound service because we know that just having the jab is not going to be enough. It won't be that people are necessarily going to take it forever because one, it's miserable, and two, probably the cost. So when they stop taking it, what's going to happen then? And they'd have lost maybe a lot of muscle if they're not doing stuff to kind of maintain that. So I have been on a bit of a journey with it, I think, myself.
Have
Kind
you
of
have
going
you
through it.
have you come where have you come from?
Well,
Where are you at to now then?
well, from absolute horror at the drive, thinking, well, this is the answer to the kind of the obesity epidemic. This is the answer. This is to have these jabs. I think, oh no, that's going to just suck up a whole load of resource. And it's not going to change a thing. It's almost like that quick fix.
Mhm.
So I started from that point, and then there's a few things I think that kind of helped along the way. I think one of them was the Jason Fung's obesity code. I think that absolutely fundamentally changed the way I thought about obesity.
Yeah.
And I moved very much from the kind of, well, people just need to just need to eat less and move more. And I just do not agree with that at all. I think when people get to being overweight, it is very difficult to lose weight because the body is wired to keep everything the same. So however hard you try to change things, really, really difficult. I mean, you can do it, of course, and people do. But it's yeah, I've definitely moved away from that kind of blaming people to kind of for being overweight to actually understanding this is really, really tricky. I don't know. What about you? What's the
Yeah,
journey?
no, it's interesting, isn't it? Now, interesting you mentioned Jason Fung's book because I think we have moved, haven't we, from that sort of calories in, calories out sort of style approach to obesity. And like you say, it's simple. You just either have to move more or eat less. It's a sort of simple seesaw. We know it's far more complicated than that. It's hormonally controlled, particularly with insulin being so important. There's a whole load of emotional stuff that drives this. There's a whole load of other hormones that adapt in our body and recalibrate, like you say. So it's not just as simple as that at all. But I think one of the things that the Jason Fung book did for me as well, and I think learning about health coaching is that, having genuinely good support that is dialed into your emotions, your feelings, helping you to navigate your own life and support in a very personalized approach that's relative to your social situation, your financial situation, your emotional and your knowledge base. People were literally had the wrong knowledge, didn't they? I think we've seen health coaching be incredibly effective at helping people to kind of just feel better generally, not, and with that lose weight, but just feel good about themselves and get back on a sort of trajectory of life that is just generally more healthy, where weight gets perhaps to a better place, if they want to. So health coaching we've seen it be so effective, haven't we? So there is a part of me that sort of thinks until we've been able to give everybody that option and genuinely give them an alternative, why are we jumping to medications and relying on that? But to come to your point, I guess there is a middle ground, isn't there? That we're actually okay. Maybe these injections are useful as a little bit of a leg up and a bit of a sort of resetting the chemical balance in the body. And then alongside that, you make sure you do the emotional work and you do the behavior change work that health coaching and other sort of approaches can deliver so well.
Yeah. Yeah, the health coach role for supporting people is absolutely key. I remember, and I think you've come across this author as well, the Johan Hari. You've come across his
Yeah,
books, and he's written a book called The Magic Pill. I mean, again, I'm talking about the injection really, rather than the magic pill. But he was being interviewed on a podcast, and and he was because he's kind of I don't know experimented with himself, but he was overweight and he decided to take the injection, and he lost quite a lot of weight, and the interviewer was saying, well, okay, so what's changed? He goes, well, do you know what? Now when I go to KFC, I can't manage what I used to manage,
yeah,
and the guy said, the slightly concerning thing for me is that you're still going to KFC.
yeah.
And then that's the whole point is that we've got to not just change, not just kind of lose weight and just carry on doing what we're doing, is we've got to do something different.
Yes.
Otherwise, we're not going to get the benefits that we want to get. And ultimately, people aren't going to live kind of healthier, more fulfilling lives.
Well, definitely the odds are stacked against us, aren't they? We are being definitely marketed that sort of ultra processed diet, and KFC is seen as a reward, isn't it? And I read a great book about it was called How the Other Half Eat, and the kind of key point of it really was that in a world where a lot of people are living in poverty, the only way you can reward yourself or reward your children, let's say, is with a sort of an inexpensive sort of like treat, which is usually high carbohydrate, high processed carbohydrate, high processed fat, and it drives obesity. But we're seeing it as our only way of kind of treating ourselves. So it's wrapped up with the emotions of reward and being nice to yourself in a world where everything else is stacked against you. And it's so we're definitely it's definitely stacked against us, isn't it? But also I think we forget as well that we really vilify obesity, don't we? And being able to get fat is a talent. We've biologically selected for it down the ages. We people that could store energy as fat survived. So actually being able to put on weight when there was the abundance of food, in summer where there's lots of fruits and, we know the kind of fructose in fruits encourages fat to be laid down. And so it was a talent, a survival talent, if you like, really. And obviously, then when there was times of scarceness, then you would sort of like, burn down your fat and use that as an energy resource. So we've kind of like we look at fat people now, don't we? And fat shame them and fat blame them and say that they're weak and stupid. Sometimes it's become and even the way we're kind of medicalising it and in giving people injections to make sure they get their weight down. It's all part, I guess, of sort of a bit of a culture of not acknowledging the value of it. So there's something for me about being a bit more balanced about the value of putting on weight. I don't know if that does that sound a bit crazy.
Yeah, I don't know. It does. It's a mindset shift, and we definitely need to change our mindset because actually, if we're blaming people for being overweight and for being obese, then I think we're getting it wrong. We're absolutely getting it wrong. And people who are overweight know that, but they take on that kind of shame and things, don't they? That other people put on them.
Yeah, well, and
Blame
that's
themselves. Yeah.
in a way that's a sort of self-sustaining sort of thing, isn't it? You feel the blame and shame. It often drives sort of comfort eating and that kind of like reward you get, the dopamine hit you get from highly processed foods, the sort of foods that are likely to keep your weight on. Um, and yeah, I mean, there's this big thing as well, isn't there, around food addiction, which the public health collaboration have been championing. A recognition that they say around sort of 15, perhaps as much as 20% of the population, the sort of unhealthy eating habits are driven by addiction, usually to highly processed carbohydrates and unhealthy processed fats. particularly the carbohydrates. And we should be treating it as an addiction, which is not a sort of a blame. Come on, you just got to be a bit, a bit stronger in your mentality. There are different tactics that you can employ. Addressing the underlying emotions and being kinder to people. And their program, the Public Health Collaborations program, Liberate, is really good on that. So I think it is about us being a little bit more sophisticated and nuanced about our approach.
Mm.
So it comes back, doesn't it, to this wraparound that you're talking about, really. I think there is an opportunity here to acknowledge that, these injections are around. 1.5 million people, perhaps in the UK, are already using them. Maybe we'll realize over time how safe that is or how unsafe it is through just the scale of the experiment we're going through. But yeah, like you, I think it's a great opportunity to make sure we wrap around that kind of like building the person and building your own capabilities and helping you to feel good about yourself and be talented at self-management as well as using the medications.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. And I think health coaches are ideally placed for that. All right, because one, I think it takes a lot of, I think it takes time.
Yeah.
People don't just, arrive at the decisions about their kind of lifestyle just overnight. They need some time to kind of think about stuff. And often, when people get sent, to their maybe get sent to a health coach for weight management, often what we hear back from coaches is not generally the stuff people get to is not just to do with their weight. The stuff they get to is about self-esteem and how people have been thinking about themselves and their early childhood experiences, all of those things where the health coach will explore some of that stuff and help people kind of get their heads around it, but also think about the goals that are going to be meaningful to them and realistic for them. That's the skill of a health coach, I think.
Yeah,
Really
interesting you said
holistic.
that. I wonder how much health coaches are able to do that. I think you're talking about that sort of trauma-informed aspect, aren't you? Of like being aware of the kind of background trauma. I don't know how many health coaches are able to sort of really get under the skin of that, but nevertheless, they're helping people to sort of like plan forward, aren't they? And to sort of, be aware that there are background things that may be influencing things, but then perhaps encourage them to sort of develop new coping strategies and new ways of thinking about themselves.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, you need to be careful. I'm not definitely not suggesting people go digging around in the past, but just providing a space where people can think about this for themselves and how it is that they're thinking about, themselves and also about what's going on for them in life.
Yeah.
Yeah, and people could explore that for themselves, and people will come to their own conclusions. But
Yeah.
by providing that space, people I think are then able to kind of maybe take the next steps forward in terms of looking after themselves because they now value themselves, and I think people can't do that until they value themselves properly.
Yeah, it's definitely. We've seen that, and I mean, you do a lot of supervision. I supervise a lot of health coaches as well. I've definitely seen health coaches taking that role, uh, sitting alongside these sort of injections, or ahead of it. I mean, it's interesting. I was at a conference last week. The UK International Health Coach Association had a sort of side day in the Integrative Personalised Medicine Conference, which is a crazy bun fight of sort of people sort of thinking along new lifestyle approaches. But this whole day was around just focused on health coaching, and there was a talk from a GP from Devon, Emma Richardson, who actually ironically was one of the researchers in her early career around developing the GLP-1 drugs. I guess initially for type 2 diabetes and then for weight loss, and so she was really interested in the drugs. But actually, she'd run a program where health coaches were, a sort of 12-week intensive coaching program instead of, these GLP-1 injections. And she showed in 12 weeks they could achieve as much weight loss as you could with the injections, on average of 8 kilograms. And her feeling was that it was much more sustainable because people had made sort of, meaningful emotional shifts and mental shifts and lifestyle shifts that perhaps you don't get if you're only relying on the drug itself.
Mm. Yeah, agree. So they've made some shifts, and they'll probably have a better understanding, maybe, of some of the things that will be useful for them in terms of the kind of the diet aspects and how the body works. Hopefully, they would have kind of come across some of that stuff as well. They've educated themselves along that program.
Yeah, because you mentioned, didn't you? And this is definitely one of the big concerns I hear from all the supporters of GLP-1 drugs, actually, is this worry about muscle loss, isn't it? That if you're not exercising or if your diet is, not perhaps, the focus on making sure you're getting enough protein, and the quality of your diet is good, particularly at the time when you're starting to feel sort of sick and full. You've got to need to make sure that the stuff that is going in is good quality, sort of particularly in older people over 50, a real focus on protein in the diet, I think is really important. And a bit of a focus on, well, a strong focus on building, keeping your muscle up. So that sort of resistance exercise, sort of lifting weights, literally, to keep your muscle bulk up. And have you seen coaches, actively supporting in that capacity, Tim?
Yeah, I have, but this is why I kind of think this is now a real opportunity to kind of do something alongside the injection. So it's for me so far, it's either the injection or health coaching. It's one or the other. Whereas
Yeah.
now it feels like there's an opportunity to bring them together, and I think that's where they're going to have their great, a really great impact actually. So I don't know. I wonder whether they're coming to the end of what we're kind of talking about now, but
Yeah.
I do wonder whether we could kind of conclude because what are our conclusions, I suppose, Ollie, from this kind of talk and
Well,
what's going on at the moment?
I'm smiling at myself because I think in hearing you say that, I mean, I like to run, and there's sometimes this sort of feeling that if you need to boost your training, you buy a new pair of trainers, or you get yourself a new sort of like a new piece of kit, but a new watch or something like that, and it makes you feel better. It might change your performance a bit, and it feels slightly maybe like these injections a bit like that. They give you that sort of nudge in the right direction. They change your performance a bit. But you get used to your new running shoes. The kind of like the novelty wears off, and I suspect probably with these injections we will adapt to them. Our bodies will acclimatize to them. So unless we are teaching people the skills to go with it as a sort of complementary, sort of thing, I think that's really important. So an analogy would be that if you just buy a new pair of trainers and think that's going to improve your running, you're not going to get anywhere. And I think it may be a little bit like that. We have to keep people doing the training, doing the emotional work and the lifestyle work alongside the boost they can get from these injections. How about you? What's your final thoughts?
Yeah, so my final thoughts are that this feels like a real opportunity. It might feel like this is the quick fix. But actually, if we see it differently, we see it as an opportunity to get alongside people and support them. I think, yeah, I think we have an opportunity to do something really, really good. And like you, the things that will maybe the things that will fall away might be the injections ultimately, and like you say, it feels like it's the thing now, but the thing that's going to be sustainable longer term is going to be the lifestyle change, and coaches are absolutely ideally placed to support people in that.
Yeah, go on. That wouldn't that just made me think that wouldn't that be brilliant if actually the outcome of this was that people had access to coaching and lifestyle support alongside the injections because you recognize the additive value. And then in the end, what people realized was the most important aspect for that was the coaching side, and that raised the profile of it. And it became business as usual for GPs to have access to health coaches because I suppose that's the problem, isn't it, with this now? There's 1,000 health coaches in the country. Some primary care networks have invested in them, some haven't. We've seen the pressure on, now that you can employ GPs in PCNs, maybe some of the roles like health coaches and social prescribers are being kind of drawn back on. So will GPs have access to coaches alongside access to the injections? That's the thing, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, really, really important. So yeah, great opportunity, I think.
Cool. Oh, well, nice to banter about you. Well, let's be nice to hear your thoughts on it. I mean, if you've got views on it, please do share in the comments, and let's keep the dialogue going. Are you able to offer health coaching alongside these GLP-1 injections? Is it happening in your area? Would you like to see it happening? If you're a patient listening to this, would you like to be able to have this offered on the NHS alongside having this kind of like pharmaceutical input? Yeah, please do share with us. Nice.